Hello everyone and welcome to today's call. This is Reggie Patterson, and today we're going to talk about leveraging private label rights content, a very important subject. Now, marketers of all stripes have rebrandable content. Most have more than they know what to do with, and we're going to talk about things that you can do with that content. But more importantly, we're going to talk about the ways to think about it. And I think that this will help you when you start to think about whether or not you're going to buy it or when you already have it, and when you're trying to figure out how to use what you already have so that you can be more strategic when you get PLR in the future. So let's talk about leveraging private label rights. We're going to talk about what PLR assumes. There are assumptions that you make about your business and about where you do business. We're going to talk about there is a context for PLR for it to be successful and to make you money. And we're going to talk about the system for that context. We're going to talk about what it means to have a USP. And we're going to talk about exponential growth. We're going to talk about building your list or your database. And we're going to talk about joint ventures and collaborations. We are also going to talk about something that you may not have heard of before, experiential content. And basically, this session is designed so that we can answer some questions. Now that we know how to set up the technical process or how to work through the technical process of setting up PLR, here's what we want to know. We want to know, how do we take that PLR that we have set up or that we can set up and turn it into something sellable? Turn it into something attractive if you're using it as content. And then how do we monetize this process? We have basically someone who has done research, someone who has done the work for us. They put these documents or they put these assets in our hand. We want to be able to make them into something that's going to make us money. That's the whole idea of buying PLR. We want it to be something that's going to work for us. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So let's talk about first, what assumptions does PLR make that you have? There are assumptions that having PLR, you have to assume certain things are going to be true about you and your business. So what do we mean by that? PLR can form the basis of a product, but it doesn't necessarily make an offer. So in other words, anytime you get something, you've got to turn it into something that's going to attract someone in. Now, if you're talking about buying PLR for the sake of content, you still got to turn it into something that's going to attract the reader, get them to click on links and to get them to stay on the page. If you're talking about taking PLR and turning it into a product, just because you buy a PLR product doesn't mean that it's going to turn into an offer that people are going to buy and buy it readily. You want people to buy enthusiastically and you want them to buy excitedly. And when you get PLR, that's not necessarily what it's for. It forms the basis of it, but it's not necessarily all by itself going to do the job. And so you've got to make it into something that even if they buy it, you've got to be able to work with it so that people consume it. That's the case if you're going to use it as content. That's the case if you're going to take PLR and turn it into a physical product like a t-shirt or a mug. You still have to turn it into something that people are going to use. And so there are some assumptions that having it makes about your business. So if you're going to be creating an information product, a physical product, or a book, or maybe some kind of content or visual assets, everything we're going to be talking about is going to be the same. The assumptions are going to be the same. These are things that you and I are going to have to think through. The things that you and I are going to have to do in order to take any PLR product that we have or that we have acquired to make it into something that will be monetizable. Now, all by itself, PLR is just raw material. If you work with that assumption, then you will have the mindset that's going to be necessary so that any PLR that you already have or that you get, you're going to know that you're going to need to work with it to make sure that it becomes something that actually makes you money. What you've got to think about, and there are two things or two ways to think about this. There's what you're going to put into the PLR to make it monetizable. What we're going to talk about is the PLR that you have. What do you put in it in order to make it profitable, in order to make it work for you, in order to make it produce for you? What is the context that you and I put our PLR into that makes it a profitable venture? Now, we've got to think through what we're going to put with it. And are we going to add bonuses to it? Are we going to give it an angle? Are we going to give it something that makes it unique? We're going to add stuff to the actual product, but the impact that those things do, the things that we add to the product, will never be as great as making sure that we bring that PLR into something where we've got a system that's going to work for us. It's the context that matters. So the context matters more than the content that we add, and that's very important. And we're going to spend most of the time talking about the context in which we're adding PLR. You and I have to have a system for marketing what it is that we're going to sell. And that's whether we are talking about content, that's whether or not we're talking about products. Listen, if you are a content marketer, you are selling, right? And what you're doing is you're trying to get people to basically join you in the ideas that you're going to be sharing. So even if what you're doing is you are communicating, you're a blogger, you're a podcaster, you're a video creator, you have to get people into what you're communicating, and you've got to get them to stay in it. It's still the same process. And so what matters most is going to be the context that you bring people in when you start talking about using PLR. You could have a great product, you can have a fantastic video, you can have a superior blog post, you can have the most excellent podcast episode that you ever had, all based on PLR. But none of it's going to matter if you didn't bring them into it with the expectation that they're going to consume it. And so what we've got to be able to do in order for it to matter, in order for us to monetize it, we've got to get them to consume what we have, and we've got to bring the right people to that product. So what matters is what kind of systems do we have to bring the right people to our stuff, whether it's content or products. If we don't have those systems, these things aren't going to be as impactful when we start talking about taking PLR and making it work for us. Now, if you have a great product, you have a great blog post, you have a great podcast episode, and when it comes into a system where you already bring the right people to what it is that you're doing, that PLR, however you use it, it's going to matter, right? Whatever you use to produce it is going to make the impact that you want. Specifically, it's going to help you to generate more income. And that's really what we want to focus on. What's the context that we bring our products, our content into when we create the PLR, or when we remake, or when we rebrand, or when we make over our PLR? The context is about the system. So what is the system that we are bringing people, bringing our content, bringing our products into? What kind of groundwork do you need in order to monetize PLR? What kind of system do you need for monetization? We need to talk about 4 principles, 4 very basic principles, and these things are going to set the stage for us being able to get our rebranded content seen by the right person. And that's what we want to do. We want to get the right person in front of whatever it is that we're doing, whether it's content or products. And so these are going to be the same principles that have been shared over time by Jay Abraham, but these practices, though, have been around. They weren't invented by Jay Abraham. These are principles that have been around since small businesses have been marketing what it is that they've been selling. And they especially work in this age of information. And that's really one of the ways in which we know that these principles are evergreen, that they are universal. They work before the internet, they work during the internet, and they're going to work for whatever comes after the internet, say Web 3.0. All these principles are still going to be the same. And they're still going to have to be the things that as a business person, as a solo person, as a solo business, you are going to have to operate in them, whatever it is that you are selling. What are the principles? Number 1, at the product level and at the brand level, at the business level, you need to have a unique selling proposition. That's principle 1. Principle 2, when you sell something, you need to sell things understanding that the customer is going to need and want other things. And you have got to be vigilant. You've got to be consistent and systematic about making sure that people see the things that you can offer that they may buy because they're in the moment, or after they have finished what they already got, or they need to complete with your product. You want to make sure that whatever that next step is, you've got it and they know about it and it's going to be available to them. That's how you generate exponential profits. We'll talk more about that in this session. List building. There's no question, and everyone knows that yes, the money is in the list. That's true, but most people do not prioritize list building even though they know it's important, right? Most of us put time and effort into the content, when we're working with PLR, when we're working with our products, we spend a lot of time in production. Truly, this one element of our business, list building, can make all the difference in the world in terms of taking, say, a marginally profitable little business and making it super profitable. If you will focus on list building, you will be able to generate more profit in your business. And then finally, there's collaborations. Now, if you didn't do anything else, if you weren't good at USP, if you weren't good at making sure that you had upsells and cross-sells, and maybe you don't have a lot of customers, and you're basically on the short end in terms of list building, when it comes to collaborations, if you can be good about creating joint ventures, if you can be good about making sure that you're doing the right things by affiliates, you'd still be a profitable business. Now, of course, there are no guarantees that all these things will work for you, but you can be bad at USP, exponential profits, and list building, and if you're good at collaborations, you can still be super profitable. You can still be super successful in whatever business that you're doing. Now, if these things are in place, if you've got these things in place and they're working for you, if everything that you're doing when you bring a new PLR product into it, then PLR is going to be a tool. It's going to help you increase your profitability because you're going to be able to take either content you'd have to create yourself and you're going to use this content, or you're going to take a product and you're going to turn it into something that's going to be sellable. When you drop a new product or new content into a system like this, then you're going to increase profitability. You're going to increase your influence and you're going to increase your authority. If these things are not in place, you can again have an excellent product, you can have excellent content, but there's no guarantee it's going to do anything for you. The only way these things are going to do something for you is you have to be able to bring the right person to what it is you're going to be selling. And if you don't have these things in place, then what's going to happen is you're going to follow tactics. You're going to focus on, let's say, Facebook ads or, solo ads or different tactics that could work, and that might take a while to work. But this is a system that you have to make work regardless of tactics. These systems have to be in place. What do we mean by USP? Let's talk about that, specifically when it comes to PLR. And I like to discuss this really at the brand level. Most people understand that when they get a piece of PLR, they're going to do something to it. They're going to have to add some kind of USP to it. They're not just going to take that product and make it available and think it's going to sell all by itself. And most people understand that they're going to have to put something in it that's going to make people say, oh, you know what? I really want this. Even if I got it from somebody else, or even if I got it and I've seen this before, I need to have it specifically for this element. And so if you can add a USP to your product, you're going to be able to generate more sales, even if you didn't do anything else and you didn't do anything else right. Now, here's the thing about PLR. Most people believe that the way you work with it is to get a bunch of it and put it all together and give it to people cheap. That's what most people think. But if you start thinking, in terms of, I don't want to compete on the basis of price, I'm not going to compete on the basis of I'm the cheapest guy or I'm the cheapest woman or my product is the cheapest, get all my stuff and get it here at this cheap price, you're going to be in a better space in order to generate actual profit with the PLR. And plus, when you do it this way, it's an exhausting way to build a brand because basically your brand is, I've got a lot of it, I can make it all available to you, and I can make it available to you cheap. Now here's the thing, right? You can certainly do that, but guess what? There's always going to be somebody that makes more of it available for cheap. Like there's no way you can differentiate in a marketplace that way. There's no way you're going to be able to sustain profitability in that way. I'm just going to give it away. I'm just going to make it cheap, and I'm going to make it cheaper than any other man or any other woman. Now, as I said, the issue is always going to be somebody can always come in behind you and add stuff at a cheaper price. This is why you don't want to go in this direction when you start talking about PLR. You want to start thinking about, number one, having a USP at the product level. Yes, you probably already know that, but definitely at the brand level. Why should I buy from you anything, right? Why should I come and listen to your podcast? That's USP. Why should I read your blog? That's USP. What do you offer that I cannot get anyplace else? And so what you've got to really be able to develop at that level, a reason for people to engage with your stuff. And so that's what you're really going to be adding. Your PLR, you'll be bringing into a system where people are coming to you for your brand. They're coming to you for what it is you offer them. They're coming in because you are consistent about delivering some kind of message or product in some way. And all you're doing is you're bringing PLR into that context. If you will commit to a USP at the brand level that really matters to a customer, then the PLR becomes a vehicle for you to use that USP to find your right customer, right? Or to satisfy the right kind of customer. The more you can build that uniqueness at the brand level and the product level in a way to connect with customers, you can expect to see repeat buyers. And that's the point of all this. Why? Because the USP is not just to make sales. USP is designed for you to get repeat customers. So that's the reason why we developed the USP. Now you might say, I've seen people develop sales and I've seen people develop sales without USP. That could be true, but it's difficult to get repeat buyers because it takes so much energy. If you've got to recreate a brand every time you sell something, then you're going to be exhausted by the time you actually get ready to serve that customer. If you can develop a USP at the brand level, develop a reason for people to buy things from you, a reason for people to listen to you over and over again, that level of uniqueness becomes the reason why, you make sales. It becomes a reason why you have people stopping at your site. You've got to be continually working on developing it. And then you drop the PLR within a system. So again, everything that we're talking about here is the system. It is the context through which we drop our PLR into. For example, do you have some way that you sell a product? Is it your way of delivering a product that makes you unique? If you're talking about content, do you have a unique way of presenting whatever it is? Do you have a unique set of contacts that nobody else has? USP gets us thinking along these lines. What is a sustainable competitive advantage? And this might sound a little too pie in the sky for just wanting to sell an information product or just wanting to use PLR. Actually, it matters, everything, because if you can think in terms of sustainable competitive advantage, what you're basically going to be doing is you're going to be saying that I'm going to offer something that nobody else can offer, and it's going to be hard for anybody else to copy. So even if I sell something similar that everybody else has, that everybody else is selling, people are buying from me because of the way that I do it. They're buying because of the way I deliver. They're buying because of the way I set it up, or they're listening to me because of the way I present it. And it's not easy for anybody to come behind me and copy me. That's what's going to be important. That's how you got to be thinking about your USP. And when you find out what that is, you continue to work on that, right? You continue to focus on what your unique selling proposition is, because it's always going to be more efficient for you to generate sales if you get people listening to you because of a USP. Because if you can focus specifically on the thing that other people find difficult to copy, then what you're going to find is that you will get customers on that basis that people cannot replicate you, and you can stop competing on the basis of price. You can stop competing on the basis of, I need to be as cheap as everybody else. No, you don't if people are coming to you for your USP. Now, you and I need to be working on a way to connect with customers, and that is ours uniquely. And so that's really what we're trying to do when we develop our USP. And so you've got to start thinking, okay, what does this look like, when we start bringing PLR into this kind of system? Now, the second part of the system is exponential growth engines. And you and I know these as upsells, cross-sells, funnels. Basically, someone comes to our page or somebody comes to our offer and they can get more than the initial buy. They can get more than the initial product. And so that's going to be the case that we generate more profits when we do these things, whether we're offering physical products or digital products. I mean, your best customers are going to be those that purchase from you a second and a third time. So again, what are we trying to do, with our PLR when we start talking about, do we have systems that allow people to buy from us a second or third time as a customer that's already in our system? Whatever we're doing, whether or not it's shopping cart based, whether or not it's just having it so that people can see it, we've got to develop systems for our business so that when someone makes one purchase, they can purchase more, and we've always got to be thinking that. When we create products, we should be thinking that, the customer's purchase, their experience with us should never be over. Their purchase is never really complete. You and I have to be able to make sure that everything that we think the customer is going to need, that we're going to be offering them. So when you start thinking about this, what are their needs? You've got to be thinking, what should they have bought from me before they met me? What should they have had? Can we create the things that make them better, whatever our niche is, if they had them before they met us? We should be thinking about, what do they need while they're buying from us now? We've got to make those things available. We should be thinking about, what are they going to need after they buy our product? We should make those things available. And we've got to be thinking, well, what if they're successful with our product? We should be making things available to that group. What if they're not successful with our product? We should make things available to that group. So again, it might sound like, well, this is a lot of production. It's a lot of products. Well, this is what you use PLR for. You start thinking about, okay, I'm going to bring PLR into a system where people are going to need more than one thing from me, and I'm going to make sure they've got everything that they need, whether or not it's in a funnel, whether or not it's all in my member area, Whatever it is, I'm going to make sure I've got everything that they need. So it's not just going to be they bought one course from me or they bought one product from me. There's going to be so much more that we can offer them, if we think in this way and we have it ready. Most of us, we don't think in these terms, and sometimes it takes a long time to build a product line, but we've got to be thinking product line. Because if we can get one buyer and they make 5 purchases, that's going to be much better than trying to go out and get 5 separate customers. Because basically, not only did you get one customer and then you've been able to sell to them over and over and over again, you've gotten good at it. Basically, you can do that with all of your customers now, and that's how your growth becomes exponential. So in other words, you get a buyer one time, but they're going to buy from you over time, and they're also going to buy from you more than one time. So exponential growth engines are important, and you need to use PLR in order to support you in that way. Shopping carts make this easy to do. And whether or not you have something like ThriveCart or SamCart, you can typically do this with today's shopping carts. You can also add on relevant offers. And again, I'm not talking about a specific shopping cart right here. You can make offers available right at the checkout. So you know what? They made the purchase, and what you're doing is you're making something else available. Sometimes you can do it through a one-click upsell, but you need to have relevant offers available to people at checkout. You need to have relevant offers available for your buyer to see after checkout. You need to have relevant offers for your buyer to see right before checkout. Now again, not all shopping carts do this, but making these things available will increase your profitability. And if you start thinking about the fact that you're going to do this with every single customer that you have, your growth is exponential. Now, you should be using PLR as the basis to create all these additional offers. So you may not have all of these offers available, but that is what you use PLR to do. You use PLR to make sure that you have offers available at checkout, that you have offers available after checkout, that you have offers available right after checkout and they're relevant to what you're already selling. And then a customer comes through, they come through your checkout, they've already bought one thing, but you've got more available to them because they've got more capacity and they want to do more to improve themselves. Now let's say that what you're selling, let's say you've taken a PLR or a printable and you've created a t-shirt or you've created a mug. Well, can you sell them an online course? Probably. If you have a t-shirt customer, can you sell them a mug also? And these are very logical things to do. It just takes time to do them and to make sure that they're available to people when we're attempting to make the sale. You and I should be using PLR to grow out a product line. So what do we mean by that? Let's say that you have customers interested in dieting. Can you sell them menu planning? And sometimes you're going to need PLR in order to create that menu planning product. Again, this is just an example. Let's say that you have sold someone instructions on Facebook. Maybe they also then need something on the subject of LinkedIn. You'll then need to make sure that you have a product available. If you don't have time to create it, this is what you use PLR to do. Now, your customer is always going to have more capacity to buy than you have availability. And so the more availability that you have to work with, you're going to give your customer the opportunity to spend their excess capacity with you. If you don't do that, they'll probably use that excess capacity purchasing some other things that they want, but they're just going to do it with someone else. If you will make these things available, what you're doing is you're saying that if you have excess capacity, then we want you to spend that excess capacity with us. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is to have those products available. And if you can't make them all, you can't produce them all, you can't manufacture them all, you've got to make sure that you get the right PLR so that they're all available and convenient for the customer in order to buy. That's how you have exponential growth. One customer could mean multiple purchases. One customer means multiple purchases at the point of sale. One customer could mean multiple purchases after the point of sale. That's how you grow exponentially. And so every customer then that you get really matters more than just going out and getting lots of new customers, right? Because you're putting these customers into a system. Now, when you start thinking about this, you have got to be thinking value-based. You can't just add products for the sake of adding products to get people to buy. So in other words, yes, you can put additional products at the checkout, but you've got to be thinking, how can I add value to this customer? How can I really improve their experience? How can I really get them to be successful with what I've already sold them? How can I do that? And so, yes, all of these things will work. If you use these powers for good, they will work. If you use these powers for evil, they may work, but they're not going to work long term, and you're not going to be benefiting your customer. So you've got to have a value-based approach. How can I benefit the lives of the people that are buying from us? By giving them something else that we have available. How can we sell something to people that will improve their lives? How can I add more value to a person's life? Now let's talk about the third element of your system, building your list, building your database. Now, I'm not going to debate whether or not you know you need to have an email list. I'm just going to assume that you do have an email list. So I know there are lots of other ways to build a list, and right now one of the hot things to do is to build an online community. All those things are very, very true. As of right now, we just need to focus on making sure that you have an email list and that you're using it right now. You need to be able to deliver content to people by email, and that's really what PLR does best. So if you are communicating on a regular basis, or let's say you're sending people to a blog or whatever you're doing, this is what you need good content to do. And you need to put that good content inside of your email. I'm not saying don't sell in your email. I'm not saying don't make an offer in your email. What I am saying to you, though, is that you need to make sure that, again, just as we talked about in the last section, that you're doing something to improve the life of your customer through your email. And if you will do that, what you're going to find is that basically you're going to have to make sure you've got accurate, credible, and well-researched information. And if you can't come up with that on a regular basis, you use PLR in order to help you do that. Now, when you do this, you start trying to make sure you've got actionable information in your email, and you're going to be using some PLR in order to do that. Please don't use content just because you purchase it. That's the wrong reason to put this content in front of your customer. You put content in front of your customer because you know it's going to improve their lives. And so understanding that all of us want to make the most of our investment, we still have to be thinking, what can we communicate with them? Especially when we're talking about building our list. What can we communicate to them that will improve them, right? And when we do it that way, we deepen trust. The whole reason to write to someone on a daily basis. Now, you may not be a person that writes emails on a daily basis to your customer, but if you do, and you write whatever frequency you write in, you are developing trust, right? Email is an intimate medium. It's an intimate way to communicate to your list. It's an intimate way to build your connection if you do it right. Now, again, I mean, you can do it just like Amazon, right? You can just send out a list of promotions. That's perfectly fine. There's nothing that says you can't do that, but you can use it, though, to build trust. If you will do that, you're going to have good content, and that content is going to have to be accurate, and it's going to have to be reliable, and you can get accurate and reliable content when you go and get PLR. Now, you do this because not everyone's going to be ready to buy from you when they meet you, but if you will build trust every day, when someone has something that they need, if you will build the trust and you will do that through accurate information, you will be top of mind, right? When you're communicating accurate information on a regular basis, people are going to have you top of mind. Now, most people don't do this because they don't think they have enough to say. And again, this is really why and how you go and you get accurate PLR in order to do this. And so you want to make sure that you get the PLR, that when you put it in an email, it really does establish and helps you to build trust. Now, your goal could also be in the email that you want people to click on a link in the email. You may want them to go to your blog post and spend some time there. It's the same process. You still need accurate content. You still need to make sure it's reliable. All you're really saying is, hey, when you get my email, I'm going to give you a notice of a new blog post that I've done, or a new podcast episode that I've done, or a new video that I've done on YouTube. It's the same process. Okay, now there is enough content available in PLR form to help you to build that daily connection. You can put that content in email, in your blog posts, in your podcasts, in your YouTube videos. Borrow the ideas, depending on what kind of speaker you are. There's plenty of content available that will help you to, again, use your email in order to build your daily connection. Now, there's also the other obstacle where we start talking about, the list building part of the system is we've got to get people on the list in the first place. We can use PLR to help us do that. You and I have to be basically baiting hooks, and we've got to put those hooks and make them available all across our website, all across the web, in any place where people are hanging out. And the kind of people who are hanging out there are our buyers, but you've got to have plenty of that content available. You've got to have plenty of that bait available. And what I tell people is you don't really have to get super fancy with or spend a lot of time trying to create an awesome opt-in form. What's most important is that you get those opt-in forms out there with an awesome piece of information so that when you promise it to the people, they just have to have it. What matters is that you've got something that's so good that people really do want to have it. And that might take time to do, and you can use PLR to help you do that. It is what you really want to focus on. When you start talking about making opt-in pages, multiple opt-in pages available everywhere, and so you do have to think about this. Even if you're doing physical products, you've got to make sure that you're putting things in front of people that really do want when they see it. So when you have an opt-in bribe or an opt-in form, it's a numbers game. It is, and one form is not going to do it all for you. You've got to continue to make those forms available over and over again. You might feel like, well, I have an opt-in form and I don't get a lot of opt-ins. That's really because you only have one, or you've done only one sharing of it. Building a list with opt-in forms is a numbers game. And so the more of those forms you have available with different kinds of offers, the more likely you will be to have someone who will come to that page and say, you know what? This is something I really want. And so I'm going to give these people my real email address in order for me to get it. And so there's no way to do it without doing it that way. And so once again, if you're going to have lots of these offers, this is what you use your PLR to do. You get PLR to help you to create all of these offers that you continually put in front of people. And so you might find that, some things are going to be more popular than others at a particular point in time. The point is that you've got to have a lot of them. You've got to do it over and over and over again. Now, there are some vendors that make a habit of doing something that is not a common practice anymore, but it is an effective one. You have to be able to work with PLR in order to do this. But I want you to think about this. If you can, what you're going to do with some vendors is you're going to give them a bonus to add to their launch. So you are helping them to sell more of their own product. Again, this is really based on some of the relationships you've already have, but what you're doing is you're creating an information product for someone else to use in their sales process. Now, why does this matter? Because in exchange for this bonus that they're going to use for their sales process, they're going to give you an opt-in form for their download page. So again, the same thing is going to be true with this method, as is the case with everything else we've talked about when it comes to list building. You can't do this with one vendor. You've got to do it with a lot of vendors over time. And so you can't do it with one vendor, one product. You've got to do it with one vendor, and you've got to keep asking. And you've got to do it with multiple vendors, and you've got to keep asking. Because once again, list building is a numbers game when it comes to your efforts. Even if what you're going to be doing, let's say viral campaigns, one viral campaign will not bring you massive amounts of leads. You have to have many of them. And what happens is you do a lot of them, and then one of them takes off. Just think about it. If you're going to do a strategy like this, where you're going to put a bonus on somebody else's download page, take a look at all the vendors in your sub-niche, all of them, and think about this. How can I ask every one of these prominent vendors? How can I add a bonus to their product launch and do it over and over again? And obviously, whatever bonus you add has got to really help them sell the product. So it needs to be something awesome. It needs to be something relevant. It needs to be something when the customer looks at it, they say, man, I would have bought this product just for that bonus. And this is a habit. You can use PLR in order to help you form these kinds of bonuses. And now the fourth part of the system is about collaborations. As I said, if you do these things right, you don't have to be great at all the other things, but this will cover a multitude of sins. There are two kinds of collaborations in online marketing. One is the affiliate relationship. It's based on sales commission. The other one is joint venture, where you're sharing revenue, and you can do either or you can do both. Both of them require continual content, however. So when you become a great affiliate, when you become a joint venture partner, you still have to be producing content and great products. Let's just talk about affiliate relationships for a second. You create great information products in order to use as a bonus for your promotion of the other vendor you're promoting. You can create bonuses for those that promote your products. In other words, somebody's going to promote your product and you can say, hey, here's a course you can promise your customers that I'm going to give you to offer to them. This is what having great PLR will help you to be able to do. You can use premiums to increase the likelihood that your product is going to sell for the affiliate. So again, you still need to have lots of content that turns into lots of products. Now, this is something that, once again, it needs to be systematic, and you need to do this consistently in order to make this work. Now, you might be one of those people that maybe have staff that does a lot of this stuff, but you don't need staff to do this. This is really a matter of asking. It needs to be part of everything that you do. But if you don't have staff, you need to develop processes to do two things. Number one, to seek out collaborations, and number two, to create new products from PLR. You've got to have those two processes in order to make collaborations work. The important thing about all four of these things that we've talked about is that they are dependent systems. And so we've talked about them one at a time to make them understandable, and we've described them separately. But if you're going to be successful in making the most of your PLR, you've got to work these processes together. You've got to make sure that they overlap and that they work together. Now, for example, you got a lot of opt-in information, right? A lot of opt-in pages. They need to have a USP. So all these things intersect. If you don't do that, then you're not going to get the right people on your list. The bigger your email list, you're going to have better joint ventures. So all these things are interdependent. Affiliates like for you to make sure that you have a good funnel in place. That means you're going to have lots of products and make them available that helps them and gives them a desire to promote for you. So again, all these principles that we have talked about, they're not static. They all work together. So think about ways in which they work together, and you're going to see them overlap. You having a USP, building a list, collaborations, and exponential growth. They all work together. Now, we've talked a lot about context tonight, and I said that I wasn't going to spend as much time on content and what you put into the PLR, but we do need to spend a little bit of time on this because there is an important element that you need in order to make your PLR unique. And so, as I said, PLR is raw material. So it's not the end-all be-all. It's not the product all by itself. It is raw material that you use in order to turn it into a great offer for somebody who wants something that you have to sell them. So again, never think of any PLR product all by itself, that it's going to do the job for you. It's not made for that. If you're going to purchase products, let's say you want to get products that will do more of the heavy lifting for you. Start thinking about purchasing products that are going to save you time because they're already in an area you know. Or purchase PLR in areas where you have credibility. So in other words, yes, you can buy products where you might use most of that product in order to sell. If you do that, just make sure there's going to be an area that you know well or that you've got credibility because you don't have to work as hard in order to convert it. And so when you start talking about verifying information, you need to be able to look at it and know, hey, this is accurate, this is not. If you get something outside of your area of expertise, that's going to be difficult to do, right? So there's never going to be a substitute, PLR or otherwise, for someone who knows what they're talking about. Never. So basically, this kind of comes back to making sure you're working and operating in areas that you know well and that you're not jumping around in terms of topics. You're not jumping around in terms of what you're going to be doing with the marketplace. You're kind of focused, and that's really going to make it easier when you start talking about using PLR. And so we're doing all of these things so that we can generate repeat customers. This is why we do all of these things, right? We're not doing these things so we can offer the most stuff for the cheapest. We're offering these things so that we can give people the best value and they're willing to pay for that value from us. It kind of brings me to experiential content. And so when you start talking about what am I going to add to the PLR in order to make it unique, trying to position yourself as an expert is difficult. There are a number of people who really are experts, and then there's everybody who calls themselves experts. You don't have to do that. There's an alternative to that. When you start talking about what am I going to add to the PLR, what am I going to do in terms of positioning, and so if maybe you're at the point where proving that you're an expert is going to be difficult at this point in the marketplace, you can add something different to a product, right? Specifically to PLR. You can add in what I call experiential content. And basically what we're doing is we are taking our experience and the experience that we have and we're putting that inside of the PLR and giving it a different angle. Experience is always unique. And that's one of the easiest ways which we can take PLR and differentiate it, is adding in our own experience. Once again, this kind of serves the whole idea that when we buy PLR, we're buying PLR within this sort of narrow scope of things that we already know well. Because if you buy outside the area that you know well, then adding your experience isn't going to work. But if you start thinking along the lines of, okay, I'm going to keep focus, I'm going to buy within this narrow element, you're then going to have all those products inside of your funnel the way we've discussed because you're leveraging what PLR really does well. You're making it unique and sellable based on the fact that you're adding real value through your own experience. And again, now you're going to have a way of making sure that you catalog your experience. And most people don't do this, not because it's hard to do, but just because it's a discipline. And so this really means that the experiences that you have that are relevant to your customers, you have to document them. And you have to do it on purpose. You must do it intentionally. You have to document what you plan to do. You have to document how you execute it. You have to document what the results were. You have to document what you used to measure what success was, and in every point in time along the way when you start talking about documentation. And you don't have to have a specific tool to do this. That's not the most important thing. What you have to focus on when you document is, do I have a tool that I can use any place? Typically, you're talking about a tool you can use on mobile, or, if you use a tablet or your desktop. It needs to be archivable. So in other words, you put something in there and it's still going to be available to you in a year's time if you need to get it. It needs to be searchable. So in other words, you can go into the database, you can put in search terms in order to find something you put in there. And then it needs to be collatable. So what you need to do is you can go and get it, and you can easily get it into something that you're using. So again, experiential content that you have cataloged through some kind of tool. You can use a number of different tools in order to do that. And then there's some called Evernote and other things like that, where you're basically documenting the things you're doing every single day, because that's where you're going to be adding your content. Now, the good thing about adding experiential content is you can talk about it in ways that make it unique. I mean, you can talk about it as either a story, or you can talk about it with specifics and things you actually did. But again, if you think about some of the best content that you probably experience, it always breaks up the information with stories. And this is where you bring your stories into play. Now again, if you don't have stories to tell and you're telling your stories outside of your area of expertise, you might be getting PLR in the wrong area. Now the key to this is the discipline of documentation, even when you're unmotivated to document. And so if that's the case, what will motivate you to document is making sure that you have an obligation to share with people. This typically means that you've got a blog where you need content like that, or a podcast, or an information product, or some kind of book. Basically something where you have to share your findings on a regular basis. Some kind of regular training where you're teaching people on a regular basis. Doing these things will help you to develop the discipline of documentation because you're obligated to do it. You're obligated to create the content. And so, as a result of that, you're going to have that documentation, if not for these other reasons, having a blog, podcast, information product, book, or white paper. And so when you do that, you've got all these unique elements and experiences that you could add to your PLR. And then all of these things make your PLR more unique and more sellable. Okay, are there any questions? Okay, remember, you can get access to our newsletter at IamProfitsCoach.com. And if you are interested in learning more about how you can use PLR to grow your traffic and profits, my team has put together a special training course that shows you exactly how to do that. You can check it out by going to impc.ws/PPL if you're interested in that. Also, be sure to take a look at our Digital Retirement Rebels Insiders Club at impc.ws/14day. Okay, so with that, thanks for hanging out.